Thanks everybody for joining. Today we're going to be talking about Angular at scale, and basically a little bit of disappointment. It's not totally focused on Angular. This is not just an idea that Angular is the best framework in the world, but basically more a methodology of how we're going to achieve scale within our web applications. So a little bit of history about myself. I am a human. I I got 2 laughs. Okay, that's a good start. So I've been a C# developer for a very long time. I was doing mostly C# .NET stuff for 10 years. And then somehow I got into JavaScript and Angular. Not quite sure how that happened. But there's this guy over here. Okay, sort him out. But it was quite daunting when I first got into it. First I did AngularJS. And it was quite a large project, and we got the opportunity of rewriting the project, or at least upgrading the project. And I just want to go through some of the learnings that I went through, some of the pains, and hopefully give you some ideas of what's out there and what can be done, and maybe there's some value that we can all pull out of this. So before I get started, I just want to let you guys know that I'm really enjoying JavaScript at the moment. I'm thinking about writing a book. And you wouldn't expect it from me, but I'm not going to give you too many guesses which one you think of these is going to be where I'm going to be drawing most of my inspiration from when it comes to JavaScript. Also, I'd like to talk about astrophysics as well when it comes to JavaScript. And astronomers have been like checking things out and looking at zooming into developers' laptops, all right? And they're finding that something is bending time and space, and they've actually figured out it's node modules on people's. So how many Angular developers do we have here? All right, so you guys have a great feeling about how this might be. Also, if you guys ever worked with npm, you might think to yourself, "Awesome! I know this cool little package I'm gonna go get, download," and then you just want this one package, that bam in your face. Yeah, the entire internet gets downloaded onto your browser. Especially if you're starting a new project, you might as well just do an npm install, come back maybe 2 days later. You can start working on your project. Right, so JavaScript, Angular, React, the whole ecosystem is quite a rapid place for development. There's all sorts of new ideas, new methodologies, new technologies, new libraries that are coming out at a rapid pace. And it can be quite daunting if you're a new person coming into the Angular space, the JavaScript framework world, to try get a handle on like what are the best practices, what are the most popular libraries, what are the best methodologies to take on board your project or start up on your project to try to become a successful Angular or React developer. It would be really nice if we could have a place to go to, or a company to go to, or even just like a one website we could go to say, listen, this is a great starting point. These are the most popular tools at the moment. You want to be successful. You want to start releasing products faster. You want to start. You don't want bugs to be a massive problem in your life, unless you're writing them. That's another problem. Where can we do these things? And I'm going to talk about that a bit later, and what team is kind of doing this. But before I do that, let me talk to you about dependency management within your project. So you might have a couple teams in your organization. Most of you are probably working in largest organizations, and there might be certain people working on certain things, and there's a dependency between all of us, right? And you might have this mind map in your mind of how everything connects together. So some people are creating the UI elements, some people are creating like the business rules, you're doing the front end, someone's doing the back end, and there's no real documentation telling you this is how it all ties up together, and your mental map might be different to the guy sitting next to you. And we kind of need a way to like manage our dependency management, especially in Angular projects, a little bit better. Then there's versioning. So if you've ever worked on a large Angular application, whether it's AngularJS or Angular 2, you might have people in your team bumping up versions all the time, getting in bug fixes, new features, and you might be on team A, and you've got another team, team B, and you're on version 3, and they're releasing on version 6 already, but there's no way you're going to version 6, because last time you took their latest version, your entire project crashed. So you've just like killed them off. You don't know project B anymore. You're going to stay on your version. And then there's Team C. They're very similar to you. They're 3 versions behind. You're 3 versions ahead. It's getting a little chaotic out there, but you don't care. Your stuff works, and you're just going to carry on that. You're not really too concerned about versioning. So I want to talk about how are we going to get a handle on our versioning within our enterprises. So coming back to how are we all going to tie these things together? How are we going to improve these things and become a better enterprise? How are we going to work and collaborate better together? So one of these methodologies is monorepos, right? So quite simply put, a monorepo is a place we're going to throw all our source code at. If we've got a couple of websites, we're going to put all those together. We're going to put all the libraries in together, and we're going to hope that they're going to work nicely together and everything's just going to get better, which isn't typically what's typically going to happen. You're going to need some kind of tooling, and tooling is going to be the key to the success of monorepos. So just to define the 2 types or main types of ideas of monorepos, there is something called monolith repos, and some very large organizations are already implementing these things, where they're just going to put everything in there, with back-end systems, front-end systems, Java, different technology stacks, and they are getting a certain amount of success out of these projects, right? And the reason of that is they got the right tooling. So I'm not going to be focusing too much on monolith repos, where I'm more going to be focusing on monorepos in regards to having multiple front-end applications in one repository. Right, so having said that, you're looking at me and you're saying, well, that's a terrible idea, right? I'm putting everyone's code into this. I don't even trust Team C. You want to put Team C's code into my repository as well? They've got like a crazy-ass build pipeline. It's going to be incredibly slow, and that's not always the case, or at least it shouldn't be the case. We need to have the right tooling in place to help us achieve success. And there are certain companies out there that are already achieving these things, and a lot of these tools are becoming open source. These things are being shared. These ideas are being brought forward. They're being opened up. They're making it visible to people, and we need to look at ourselves, look at our teams, and maybe just consider, is there some value into this? Should I be researching into these kind of things? Why are these teams doing it? Why are they getting value out of it? And I want to talk about some of the advantages that you can get out of monorepos. So one of the first things is code visibility. So basically, everyone's code is in this monorepo, and this helps create some type of a better type of collaboration. So if you're curious about, well, how does this work? How did Johnny solve this problem? All the code is in one place. I can go to that place. I can put a breakpoint on there. I can read the tests. I'm able to see the full ecosystem of all front-end systems, and basically I'll have a lot of code reuse, right? So typically someone might be starting a new project in the same organization on the same tech stack. And you're an Angular developer, they're an Angular developer, they're 2 different teams. I'm going to build a drop-down, and he's going to build a drop-down. They're trying to achieve the same thing, and we're all going to reinvent the wheel all over again, all right? We all want to build forms. We all want to resolve the same business rules. Why are we rewriting these things? Why can't we put our code together, our collective intelligence together into one repository and start solving things together as teams? Right? And then another thing is code modernization. So if you've ever been on a team that if you've ever tried to upgrade an Angular project, or you've gone from AngularJS to Angular 2, you might have teams that are still stuck on AngularJS, right? Everyone just left them behind because they didn't want to upgrade, or because the project was too massive. If you're on one code base, you're basically moving together as one team. So the modernization part of it is, we're all using the same versions of everything. We're all on Angular 7. We're all solving the same kind of problems. If there's a new team, or if there's a printing utility, we're all using the same utility. because we're going to be using the same styles, we're going to be using the same layouts, and that's just going to take the problems, like the day-to-day problems, away from you, and you guys are going to start creating. What are you guys there to create solutions, right? Guys aren't there, or you shouldn't be there, figuring out why doesn't the drop down like select the second item and then do the little bit of animation. That shouldn't be your core concern. You should be building solutions for your clients and making a success of those things. Right, so the company in question, or on that I would like to talk to, is about Nowell. You guys might have heard of Nowell. Anyone heard of Nowell? Right, so they're creating the tooling to help extensive dev tools to help us reap the rewards out of using monorepos. And basically, the idea that they have is you can have lots of front-end systems or front-end web applications, and the core to your business is going to be reusable libraries. So whether it is a UI design system or a utilities library or business rule library, these libraries are going to be something that anyone can consume. Anyone can start up a new web application and start consuming these libraries and start building up things that are more reusable and more collaborative. So the idea between the tooling is that you're only going to build and test changes, right? So you can imagine I've got this massive monorepo, right? I've got all sorts of web applications in this monorepo. Now I make a little change, and I pump my branch into a CI system, and all the tests are going to run. Unit test, acceptance test. You're going to have like thousands of tests running, and I'm never going to get my PR approved because the build is going to run forever and ever. But what if we have good dependency mapping? What if we only run the test for the things we've actually changed, right? So if I made a small change, I should only be running a small amount of tests. Or if I only have a small amount of dependencies on my change that I've made, why am I running all the tests? I just want to run those specific things, and I want everyone to feel assured that when my build goes green, I've touched nothing else except the things I've been working on, and everything is working, has succeeded. Right, so some of you might be looking at me and saying, well, this sounds like a really massive enterprise solution kind of thing. This might be a bit too complicated for my medium-sized project or small project. Not necessarily true. You can also leverage on the NXDev tools to help you structure your project nicely, to gain the advantages of linking independent dependencies between your separate libraries and just getting a better understanding of how your applications put together, and then leveraging off the third-party popular tools that Nowell provides out of the box. So there's some sort of familiarity, right? So if I come from one team to the next team, I can see, oh, you guys are using NGRX stores, right? Angular developers, they understand these things. Nowell knows that these are popular tools. They're incorporating them. They're encouraging you to use them. And this allows new developers to come on board and start developing a lot faster because there's a lot of familiarity there, right? So again, if you have one app, isn't this a bit of overkill if I just have one app? Not necessarily. It could be, maybe not. It's debatable. But it's quite simple to say, well, I'm going to take my existing project. I can just basically dump it inside of a Nowell web application, and it should just run as it always did. And what you could do from that point, you could either say, you could take two routes. You could say, I'm going to leave my application as it is, but going forward, I'm going to write smaller libraries, reusable libraries, smaller components, and let the dependency management take advantage of that route. Or I could say, I'm going to use my existing project, and I'm going to break that up, because a lot of you guys already have your stuff broken up into modules, and these modules are typically what Nowell calls libraries. And basically, it's just tying up the dependencies of these modules into separate libraries. Okay, so then there's also the question of future support. Like, really, do I want to pull in another library? This thing's going to become deprecated at some point, or they're going to stop supporting this thing. I can tell you now that the Nowell team work very, very closely with the Angular team. If there are any updates, any upgrades, any new features, they're working basically almost side by side. A lot of the top developers in the Nowell team, they were Angular developers themselves, right? They were on the tool teams. They actually built some of the features that you'll find in the Angular framework itself. So you're not going to have any issues with future support. So anyone heard of Basil? Anyone heard of Basil? Oh, yeah, a few people. Okay, so this is going to change a lot of things. Google has been using Basil in their builds for about 8 years already now. So it basically helps them build incremental builds. So I'm sure if any of you have started up an Angular project, you have to hit that compile. You have to wait for everything to compile up. Not anymore. Basil's going to help you do incremental building. It's going to keep snapshots of what built prior to you coming. So if you worked on the project yesterday, why am I rebuilding everything? Why am I recompiling everything? Basil's going to help you compile a lot faster and get up and running a lot quicker. And when this comes out of preview, you can already use it today. It's already inside of Angular 8, but still in preview. When this comes out, it's going to be part of the Nowell library as well. They're working hand in hand with Angular, so this is going to be future support for you already in-house. Right, so Nowell's not just about the extensions. It's also about creating an ecosystem. It's also about creating extra tools to help Angular developers become better developers. And one of the tools they have is the Angular console. Quite simply put, it's a nice place to go to if you're not quite sure about how the Angular CLI works, like what all the commands do. How do I build? How do I test? It's a nice UI to go to understand the CLI schematics as well as the Nowell schematics, whether it's creating components, testing specific components, running certain amounts of tests. You can do it in this. And you might be saying, okay, well, I don't want to install another application on my laptop again. It's cool, not a problem. They've got an extension that you can get into VS Code, and you can just use it within your development environment straight away. Another place to go look at is Connect, their Connect website. It's basically a place you can go to. You'll be able to find awesome documentation, books written by industry experts, some of the greatest learning books you can read about where Angular is going, mono development, specific things that you might want to learn, level up on, whether it's Angular routers or upgrading Angular. It's a great place to get documentation. If you don't like reading really long books, they've got a place called Cookbooks, and these are basically small chunks of solutions that you might not be aware of or you've been struggling with. You can just basically search, and you can find all sorts of awesome and interesting like cookbook snippets that help you with animations and code organization, as well as NGRX, all the popular and nice libraries out there. You're going to find these in the cookbooks. And then there's, for anyone else that really doesn't like reading, they've got a whole bunch of podcasts and videos, industry experts chatting about Angular and Nowell specifically. Right, then our last portal I'd like to introduce you to is the NXDev portal. Quite simply, it's a place you can go to where you can learn about the fundamentals, the API. You can pick up a tutorial and just quickly go through Angular and Nowell projects and find out how everything works. A very easy to understand and quick way of scaling up. As you can see, Nowell, you see on the right there, it's not just about Angular, it's about React as well. So we can put our React and our Angular apps together into one mono repo and get the benefits of reusable libraries. Okay, so the idea here is we want to have a almost like top level, you could almost call dummy front-end sites, and we're going to have all our dependencies. Now these are just made up names, but basically you can start understanding like how are these separate and independent libraries dependent on each other, and how do we use them, and how can I visually see these things within a project? Like, can you give me this kind of tooling? And that's what I'm going to demo for you guys now. Okay, so I'm a new developer on an Angular project, new enterprise, and I've been given a task to basically add validation to a UI component, right? But now I know nothing about this application. Wouldn't it be cool if I could run a command to get a layout of my current application? So part of the extensions gives me I have a dependency graph task I can call up, right? And basically what this is going to do is Nowell gives the tooling to say, well, what is dependent on what inside my project? So you'll see I've got two front ends, well, two websites, an admin site and a front end site. And I can see that the front end site is dependent on a ES/UI library. And typically this would be something like a UI design system where I'd have like my UI components that I want everyone to reuse. I don't want everyone to reinvent the wheel. I want you guys to use this UI component. If there's a problem there's a specific team that's going to sort that stuff out, but I want you guys to reuse it. And I can see that it's also dependent on this ES common library. So I've been given this job. I need to add validation to this project. So I find the component that I need to work on, and I'm going to be super smart. And I'm going to add validation. There is my validation. I'm such a smart guy, all right? And I'm happy with that. And I want to ask myself, well, what have I just affected in this project, all right? And Nowell's again going to run up the dependency tree and it's going to say you messed with the UI library, and because the front end site is dependent on the UI library, there is an effect here. Okay, you could possibly screw up this entire site, right? You probably won't, but there's a good chance. So I better run the UI, the ES/UI tests, and I better run the front-end tests as well, because there is a good chance that something is affected there, right? So you can see the advantages here. Every time I make a change, I can already tell if I'm affecting someone, if I'm affecting another team, if everything's going to run perfectly. So I'm going to run my unit test, I'm going to run my acceptance test, and when everything goes green, I know everything's good. As the opposite is, everyone's got their own NPM modules or packages. I'm just going to blindly put in someone's new version. I've bumped it to version 6. They've run their test, but I'm not sure, just because they ran their test, how's it going to affect my project? I put their package into my project, everything, one or two things break because we didn't run everything together. There's no real independence in our projects that we create, right? Like a lot of the times, we're trying to build these separate systems, and we say, well, it has to be independent. It's got to run in an isolated environment. But we're all dependent on each other, whether it's front-end, back-end systems. We're still going to rely on calling things and getting things from each other. So why aren't we mapping these things together? Why aren't we building these dependencies, right? So typically, once I create my branch, my branch is going to run on a CI system, and I'm going to tell the CI build server that I only want to run affected tests. Okay, so what it's going to do, it's going to take my branch, it's going to compare it to master, it's going to say, again, like you saw in the dependency tree, these are the tests I need to run, and only these tests, because nothing else is affected. Okay, it's going to run all those tests, everything's going to go green, and then I know I'm the best developer because I wrote this awesome code. All right, so that is the idea there. Now, let's go back here. We looked at our initial site. So now I am another developer on the admin side, right? And I need to also start using this UI component library. I've been forced to use it. My manager says I have to use this thing, so it's okay. They say it's an awesome design library. So I'm going to go to my admin site. I'm going to import this module or library. All right. Save you. And now I want to see, right, what are my dependencies here now? Okay, so quite simply, drilling home this point, quite clear to see that now there is a new dependency here, right? So now, not only is the front-end site going to be affected by my changes, but my admin site as well. So I have a greater dependency. I need to know when I make a change on this library that both of these sites go green. Both acceptance tests are working. And I'm just going to have much more confidence releasing this, especially if I'm doing trunk-based development. The moment this goes into master, I've got a much better surety that this is going to work 100% with all the other tests that you might have that come along with that. Okay, so switcheroo. Got a switcheroo here. A lot of the times people try to introduce ideas or methodologies like collaboration, and they'll bring up they'll have meetings and they'll do posters and you'll go away for the weekend and they're just going to hope you're going to start doing collaboration. Well, that kind of stuff doesn't happen on its own, right? You need to put in some kind of structure, some kind of reforms, some kind of methodology that's going to help you bring about real collaboration. And depending on what you've seen today, you might see maybe there's some value in this. Maybe if we bring everyone together closer by using technology, we can actually create some kind of real collaboration. It's quite clear to see that we're going to be seeing code reuse, right? We're going to be creating these separate libraries that do specific tasks, and you don't need to consume all these libraries. A lot of them can be just for your team. And Nowell said it gives you a setup where you can say, well, okay, these libraries are ours, but these libraries, these things are common. You reuse these things. Don't reinvent certain things that are going to waste your time. They've been done. We've solved these problems. Let's move ahead. Consume these things, okay? And then I just want to go over here. What else? Yeah, collaboration. Well, again, we saw dependency management. Awesome, right? We've got a UI that we can pop up. We can immediately see these are dependencies. And the more libraries we're getting, the bigger our project is getting, the more scalability we're going to be seeing, right? With lazy loading and all these kind of things, we're going to be lazy loading modules into our project, and we're going to basically have better code visibility. And then maybe the greatest thing, well, for me it is there's no versioning, right? There's no need for versioning. Once you're on master, what's the point? You already have the latest. Everyone is moving together. We're all moving together forwards. There's no more need for, I need version 6 of that and 7.2 of this. It's going to kind of hopefully solve these kind of problems. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys. Appreciate you coming.